Have you ever wondered why so many ancient cultures seemed obsessed with blood? Why kings demanded sacrifices? Why temples echoed with chants of fear? And why entire empires thrived on rituals that seem insane to us today? The truth is darker than you think. These weren't just primitive traditions. They were mind games, carefully designed systems of fear and loyalty that gave priests and rulers ultimate power over millions of people. And the scariest part? The psychology behind those rituals is still alive in ways you'd never imagine. Picture this. You're living thousands of years ago. Crops fail, storms destroy villages, plagues wipe out families. No science, no answers, only questions. And then, a priest steps forward. He tells you the gods are angry, that the only way to survive is to spill blood an animal, or maybe even a human. And in that moment, fear doesn't just grip your mind, it controls your actions. You give in because the alternative feels worse. This is how rituals became weapons. They weren't random. They were designed to create terror, then relief. To break you down, and rebuild you into someone obedient. Think about it. Fear is the oldest form of power. Nothing manipulates human behavior more effectively. In ancient Egypt, priests convinced people that if the proper rituals weren't performed, the Nile wouldn't flood, crops wouldn't grow, and entire kingdoms would collapse. In Mesopotamia, kings claimed they were chosen by the gods and demanded endless offerings to keep divine wrath away. In Mesoamerica, thousands of hearts were cut from living bodies and offered to the sun, because people were told that without blood, the sun itself would stop rising. That's not just religion, that's psychological warfare. And here's the chilling part. Rituals worked because they hacked the brain. When people gathered for a sacrifice, they weren't just watching horror, they were experiencing unity. The fear, the chanting, the blood. The release, it triggered the same parts of the brain that bond soldiers in war or crowds in a stadium. The ritual wasn't just about pleasing the gods. It was about programming the people. Once you've seen blood spilled for your survival, obedience feels natural. Questioning feels dangerous. And loyalty feels like the only path to safety. Now ask yourself, was it really about gods at all? Or was it about power? Because every ritual ended the same way, with priests, kings, and rulers standing taller, stronger, more divine than ever. They held the knife, they gave the commands, they declared what the gods wanted. And when the ritual was over, the people walked away terrified but grateful, convinced that only their leaders stood between them and chaos. It was genius, terrifying, manipulative genius. And here is the twist that should scare you the most. Those ancient mind games didn't die with the temples. They evolved. The psychology of fear and ritual is still around us today. Maybe you don't see blood sacrifices anymore, but think about how fear is used in politics, in media, in culture. Leaders still convince you that only they can protect you. Institutions still demand rituals, pledges, oaths, ceremonies that bond people into obedience. The same ancient formula repeats itself. Fear, ritual, control. So when you look back at history and ask, how could people let this happen? How could they kill, bleed, and bow down in the name of gods they never saw? Remember this. They weren't stupid. They were human. And humans are wired to obey fear, to cling to ritual, and to surrender to power when survival is at stake. Which leads to the most haunting question of all. If ancient blood rituals could control millions, what rituals are controlling you today? Imagine standing in the middle of a crowd, thousands of people pressed together, eyes fixed on a single stage. At the center, a priest raises his hands to the sky. A king sits on a throne, silent, glowing in gold. And everyone waits for the moment of fear, the sacrifice, the ritual, the command that will decide if the gods are pleased or angry. You can feel the tension in the air. Your heart beats faster, not because you want it, but because you know if the ritual fails, life itself could collapse. That's how power worked in the ancient world. Kings and priests didn't just rule, they owned the human mind. Rituals weren't random acts of faith. They were carefully engineered performances. Every chant, every drop of blood, every symbol carved into stone had one purpose: to remind the crowd who held control. The king wasn't just a man, he was the bridge to the gods. The priest wasn't just a religious figure, he was the gatekeeper of your survival. Together, they built systems that turned belief into law and fear into obedience. Take ancient Rome. The gladiator games weren't just entertainment. They were rituals of blood, staged in massive arenas where emperors sat above tens of thousands of citizens. Each fight, each death, was a reminder that Rome was powerful, Rome was eternal, and Rome demanded loyalty. And when the crowd cheered as blood spilled, something deeper happened. The people felt united, bound together not by love, but by fear and awe. The emperor became more than a ruler, he became the embodiment of order. And in a world of chaos, people clung to that. Or think about Egypt. The pharaohs weren't presented as kings, they were gods on earth. Every ritual, from temple sacrifices to massive festivals, was designed to keep that illusion alive. If the Nile didn't flood, priests told people it was because offerings were lacking. If enemies attacked, it was because faith had weakened. And so people gave more, obeyed more, and surrendered more. Not because they truly believed in every word, but because the fear of the unknown was too great. Ritual gave them certainty, and the pharaohs gave them a story that only they could control. In Mesoamerica, it went even further. The Aztecs believed the sun itself needed human blood to rise. Imagine waking up every morning, knowing that if your leaders didn't spill enough blood, the entire world would die. That is not faith, that is psychological chains. And here's the genius. Once people accepted that survival depended on ritual, they would never question the rulers again. Who would dare risk the sun not rising? Who would dare take that chance? The truth is, these rituals were less about gods and more about control. Leaders understood something timeless. Fear bonds people faster than hope. When crowds gathered, when fear surged, when the knife fell, people were not just witnesses, they were participants. They screamed, they chanted, they obeyed. And in that shared terror, a society was held together like iron, not by choice, but by manipulation. And here's something even darker. Once people are conditioned by fear, they begin to police themselves. You didn't need soldiers on every corner. You just needed neighbors who believed the ritual must continue, who believed doubt was dangerous, who believed silence was safer than questions. This is how fear spread, not only from ruler to subject, but from person to person, family to family, generation to generation. Fear became tradition. Ritual became culture, and power became permanent. Now ask yourself this: did the kings and priests really believe the stories they told? Or did they simply understand the psychology of their people? Maybe they too felt the fear. Or maybe they saw an opportunity. If you can convince someone that only you stand between them and destruction, you don't just rule them, you own them. And for thousands of years, that's exactly what happened. But here's the part most people forget. Rituals weren't always bloody. Sometimes they were subtle. A festival here, a prayer there, a public oath or ceremony. Even the simplest rituals worked because they were repeated. Over time, repetition creates habit, and habit becomes truth. Once people repeated the same words, the same gestures, the same obedience again and again, questioning felt unnatural. The ritual became their reality, and reality became whatever the leaders said it was. So when you look back at history, at the arenas of Rome, the temples of Egypt, the pyramids of the Aztecs, remember this. These were not just monuments of stone. They were monuments of control. Every drop of blood, every chant, every ritual carved fear deeper into the human mind. And the more fear spread, the stronger kings and priests became. Power wasn't built with swords, it was built with psychology. With blood, with fear, with ritual. And if you think all of this is just ancient history, you're not paying attention. Because the methods that once controlled empires didn't disappear. They transformed. The same psychology still exists around you. Only now, it hides in new rituals, new fears, new performances of power. Which raises the question, if they could manipulate entire civilizations thousands of years ago, what makes you think you're free today? We've seen how rituals demanded blood, how fear kept people in line, and how kings and priests used myths to control millions. But here's the darkest truth of all. Those rituals never truly disappeared. They evolved. And today, they shape your world in ways you don't even notice. Think about it. Do you really believe ancient Rome is gone? Or Egypt? Or the Aztec Empire? Their buildings may have crumbled. Their languages may have faded. But the psychology of control they perfected is still alive. Only the costumes have changed. Instead of priests in temples, you have politicians on stages. Instead of chants before gods, you have chants at rallies. Instead of sacrifices of blood, you have sacrifices of freedom, time, and money. The performance continues. And just like the ancients, the audience still plays its role. Look at modern politics. Campaign rallies aren't so different from ancient festivals. Crowds gather, flags wave, chants echo. The leader steps out, not in gold, but in tailored suits, speaking not of gods, but of security, jobs, prosperity. Yet the psychology is the same. Ritual creates unity. Ritual creates identity. And once people are emotionally bound, questioning feels like betrayal. The crowd becomes the ritual, and fear becomes the glue. Fear of the other side. Fear of collapse. Fear of chaos. And so, people obey. Not because they understand, but because they feel. And it doesn't stop there. Think about media. Every day, you wake up to headlines designed not just to inform you, but to trigger you. Fear of disease, fear of war, fear of economic collapse. The ancient priests told people the sun would die without sacrifices. Today's rituals tell you society will collapse without your constant attention, your vote, your consumption. The forms change, but the psychology doesn't. Fear still drives belief. Belief still drives obedience. Even in culture, rituals survive. Why do nations stand for anthems, pledge allegiance, repeat the same words over and over? Why do we treat certain flags, monuments, or holidays with almost sacred reverence? These are not random traditions. They are rituals, modern, bloodless rituals that bind people together in the same way temples and sacrifices once did. They create identity, loyalty, and above all, compliance. And just like in ancient times, once people are conditioned, they stop asking questions. Now here's the terrifying part. In the ancient world, fear was external. You feared angry gods, failed harvests, invading armies. But today, the fear is internal. It lives in your phone, your television, your own thoughts. You carry it everywhere. You're never free from it. Which means the ritual of fear isn't something you attend once a year in a temple. It's something you live every day without realizing it. And this raises a haunting question. If ancient rituals shaped human behavior for thousands of years, if they taught kings and priests how to bend entire civilizations to their will, what makes you think today's rituals aren't doing the exact same thing to you? When you stand for a symbol, when you chant a phrase, when you surrender to fear, are you making a choice? Or are you just repeating a ritual older than memory itself? The truth is, humanity has always been ruled by psychology, not by swords. Blood, fear, and ritual built empires, and they still build them today. The stage looks different, but the performance hasn't ended. And maybe the scariest thought of all is this: we still haven't broken free. Because if myths could command millions of people to spill blood in the name of gods, and if rituals could make ordinary citizens cheer as others were sacrificed, then maybe, just maybe, you are still inside a ritual right now. One you didn't choose. One you don't see. One you think is normal. So the next time you hear a chant, watch a ceremony, or feel that familiar surge of fear telling you to obey, ask yourself this: is it really your choice? Or is it just another ritual of control, passed down from the ancient world, reshaped for today, and hidden in plain sight?